Good morning, everyone. We are now going to have our invertebrates and aquaculture session. My name is Megan Davis. I work at Florida Atlantic University, and I'll be your moderator today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So our first presenter today, but just for the presenters, want to let you know that you'll have 12 minutes for your presentation and 3 minutes for questions. You'll have a timer up here, and I'll also be keeping time. So anyway, we're excited to have you all here, and we have a great lineup of speakers this morning. Our first speaker today will be Michael Coogan, and if you can come up and we'll get started. Thank you.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Good. All right. Buenos dias, amigos. I'm going to be switching things up today and going to be talking about aquaculture and specifically integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, working with species from different trophic levels, and more specifically, a system called the AquaFort that University of New Hampshire has been developing over the last 10 or so years. That's a picture of it there. And something I think could be really useful in the Caribbean. So I'm not going to go over this too much because we've been talking about it all week, but the fish stocks in the Caribbean have been declining for many decades. There's been loads of habitat degradation, food insecurity for millions of people, and a lot of imports costing quite a bit of money. I want to give a shout out to Krista for this amazing table here from the Bahamas, but this is pretty representative of a lot of the countries in the Caribbean where these really important commercial stocks have been overfished far beyond management at this point. And so the Caribbean in particular has an amazing opportunity, perhaps the best opportunity in the world for aquaculture. The climate is perfect for growing many, many different species. And there's a market for it. The people here, they eat many, many different species. Where I am in New England, we like salmon, tuna, cod, just a couple different species. They grow very slowly. Here, everything grows much more rapidly. We have a massive market. We're centrally located. You know, we've got North America, South America all around us, all of these different island nations, a very skilled workforce with a huge small vessel fleet. And the system that I'm going to be talking about today can all be managed by small vessels and a community. And that community is what's so important. It's what we really focus on, working with fishermen up in New England and our other locations. And it's what is necessary to grow aquaculture fisheries and do it all in the right way. You know, not these massive, large-scale commercial farms. And then, of course, tourism is hugely important and has become super profitable for a lot of farmers up by me. But there are, of course, quite a few challenges. Right now, the Caribbean produces less than 1% of aquaculture production globally due to a number of factors: lack of infrastructure, there aren't many feed mills or hatcheries for seed supply, unstable electricity, logistics are complicated, supply chains are frequently disrupted. There has been limited investment, but as we've seen from these many talks, there's a lot of investment now in the Caribbean that can be utilized. Regulation and permit, from talking to a lot of you, is quite challenging depending on which island. And then storms are, of course, the big one that affects so many people in marine systems and aquaculture as well. So a little bit about our system. So that top yellow star is where I primarily do my work. In the Gulf of Maine, it's very cold. We grow steelhead trout, blue mussels, and sugar kelp. We also, while I'm here today presenting, the rest of my team is in the Gulf of Mexico and Alabama, and they are deploying pretty much the same exact system down there, just off of Alabama, where they're growing red drum, oysters, and gracilaria, or red seaweed. And we also, this is in conjunction with the University of Southern Mississippi. We also were just permitted for a farm in Saipan. So we're trying to expand, but really the Caribbean is, like I mentioned, a perfect place to expand. And there's a lot of need. A bit about our fish, about these trout. So they're born rainbow trout. It's an anadromous species. They're sent from Washington State to New Hampshire, about an hour from where our farm is. They're grown out for around a year. until they're a few hundred grams, and then we transfer them out into a marine environment. And they can handle this transition very well, and their growth shoots through the roof when they're transferred into a marine environment. I don't know if I have time for this. If I do at the end, I'll play this video of our stocking, but this is what our system looks like here. And so it's a 2-bay system. It's a really, really small system. It's just the nets are 6 meters by 6 meters by about 4.5 meters deep, 170 cubic meters, very small. And by having these 2 bays, we have a lot of advantages. Experimentally, it's wonderful. Just the last year, we experimented with different sized fingerlings. So we stocked some out in October at around 300 grams, and the other bay was stocked out at about 150 grams, just to see, the faster you can get them out of the hatchery, the better, but that doesn't always translate to good growth, good survival, et cetera. And this is a bit of our growth that we have here. So on the left, we've got winter and spring growth. We stock them out around 300 grams. This is in pen 1, the ones that have the larger fish. In the hatchery, you can see in red, they're growing quite slowly. Then that winter grow out in blue. Even in the winter, once they're moved to the ocean, they acclimate very quickly, grow very quickly. As the winter goes on, they slow down. But around that black mark towards the end, around May, that's when the waters really warm up and the growth explodes. And in the chart to the right, you can see this is our harvest time, and it's sort of expanded on. So if it was on the same figure, the slope would be quite a bit steeper. And that black line shows our average growth. They're now growing, 500 grams to a kilo per month. And on the top, you can see some of the larger individuals. So some of these individuals in the course of a year went from 300 grams to over 5 kilos. And this is what it looks like visually. These small fish just in April on the top left, now becoming these absolutely monster, beautiful fish on the right in just a couple months. So we have to remain compliant with many different agencies. In order to get this permit, we had to do integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, and we have to keep our production less than 10 tons. We were far below that. Even combining the 2 of these different systems, we're about half of that, producing 5,483 kilograms. So we have quite a bit of room for expansion. When we're looking at feed, we have to keep it at our densest month when we're feeding the most. We have to keep it below 2,270 kg. And if you look over on the right, June and July was our highest feeding month. And again, we were around half of what we're permitted to feed. So there's a lot of room for growth for just this small system. And then continuing on with that, fish welfare is critical for us. So according to that paper, Turnbull et al. In 2005, you want to keep these stocking densities below 22 kilograms per cubic meter. Each pen is 170 cubic meters. We maxed out at around 15 cubic meters. And you can see on the left, over time, all of these different sampling periods, they start approaching towards that stocking density indicated on the right figure in the red horizontal line. But every time we harvest, you can see that stocking density decline. Okay. The other really important thing with fish welfare is survival, obviously. If they're not surviving, you can't claim that you have good animal welfare. In pen 1, the ones that we stocked larger, we had over 95% survival. Pen 2 didn't do quite as well. We had a lot of small runts that never really caught up, and they never really catch up, even as you're top harvesting throughout the cycle. While we want to maintain the welfare of our own fish, we also want to take care of the surrounding environment. And the beauty of integrated multi-trophic aquaculture is you can become net neutral as far as your nutrient output into the environment. And so by using, biomass of our different species and proximate analysis, trying to figure out the nitrogen levels and the composition of all of these, we can figure out exactly how much, as well as the feed amounts, we can figure out exactly how much nutrients we're emitting into this environment and how much are being sequestered by our mussels and sugar kelp, our extractive species. And we found sort of the golden ratio, which has been talked about for a few decades now, that it's about 3 to 1. So for every kilogram of fed species, whether it's fish or shrimp or whatever it is, you want 3 kilograms of extracted species. And that's very much the case with your animals. So mussels, bivalves in general are much better at sequestering nitrogen than at least sugar kelp is. If we're talking about some local species, some red macroalgae, the gracilarias, for example, that are much higher in protein, they can pull in a lot more nutrients. Sugar kelp is really mostly carbon. And then economics. You can't be sustainable unless you're economically sustainable. And so we work with a number of different fishermen. That's Ward Byrne on the left. He's a lobsterman, and Gunnar Eck on the right. And we've been working with them for the entirety of the project, over 10 years now. And we sell exclusively local. We sell to local markets, local restaurants. We donate to a food pantry. And we're not profitable yet because the university is expensive, we're expensive and all of that, and we're doing a lot of experimentation. But just from fresh sales alone from these different markets, we were able to produce $50,000 that's reinvested into our program. And last year we started value-added products. So now we smoke our products. This year we just started canning our products, which I think would be tremendously valuable in the Caribbean, where you don't always have cold storage, for example, and you have a much longer shelf life. We were able to generate $30,000 through smoked product. And just to conclude on that, basically, we were able to stay below our thresholds for biomass, for feed amounts. We kept stocking densities below where they needed to be. And we were able to not quite become profitable, but generate $80,000 in revenue, which for many other operations would be total success and very profitable. So the next steps, my team right now is in the Gulf of Mexico and Alabama. They sent a shipping container with the entirely fabricated new AquaFort down there, and they're installing it off the Gulf of Mexico, growing these 3 different species. It'll be deployed for 2 years, where we'll train fishermen. We will evaluate markets down there. We'll monitor our environmental impact and see how it holds up to hurricanes. And a lot of that is engineering. Half of my team is engineers. They've modeled all this for quite a while, and it's very much over-engineered. We have those standards-based factors of safety down on the bottom. If it's above 1, it is good enough, basically. And this is an environment that is completely different from our environment. We get hurricanes. We have modeled the system off of 50-year waves, 10-year currents. We have tiger sharks, bull sharks, and other predators out there. So we have a predator net made out of copper that's also helps with biofouling, and it's a sandy bottom, whereas ours is much more gravelly. So in every location, you're going to have to, be specific and have specific attributes to that location. And just kind of honing in on that, location is key. Every location has different materials and labor costs, infrastructures, environmental conditions. The markets are all totally different. Whether you have a seed source, hatcheries or otherwise, permits are obviously different. Predators will change, and your purpose. We are mostly producing food, but this can be a super valuable tool for stock enhancement. You can overstock both of your pens, and then halfway through your production, release one of them, whether it's grouper or snapper or some of these over-harvested species, and transfer the other pen and into both systems and bring those densities back down. And then ecotourism, again, is massive. And so these are just species. All of these species here have a hatchery within the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean general area, except for, I believe, lobster do not, to my knowledge. But there's a number of potentially profitable species, both for finfish, for invertebrates, for macroalgae. We heard some amazing work with the Chondrus crispus the other day in St. Lucia, but there are so many incredible species that we could be working with here, and this is just something that I sort of came up with, a potentially useful one somewhere in the Caribbean, but it's up to whoever wants to run this operation, what makes the most sense for them, right? So by producing red snapper, multiple macroalgae species, you've heard about the amazing work that Megan Davis has done with Queen Conch, and there are multiple very valuable bivalve species, such as the lion's paw scallop here as well. And so a lot of good options, but again, depends where you are, right? And so I'm going to end on that. The last thing, just a little self-promotion and also a bit of education. We just released a podcast called Get Aquacultured if you want to learn about it. That QR code works as far as I know. And we've got an episode with Megan on Queen Conch. We've got finfish, macroalgae, all sorts of different things. I think it's pretty good. And we also are now starting a global education program for a master's in aquaculture for engineers in particular. We're going to be taking between 4 and 6 students, one from each one of these different countries. They're going to come to New Hampshire and work on projects targeted to their specific countries. They'll be co-advised in New Hampshire and by their PI in their specific country and work on the problems that are important to them and to their community. And it's fully funded. We'll cover your stipend, we'll cover tuition and all of that as well. So really want to work with as many of you as possible. And with that, yeah, Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Michael. We have time for a couple questions. Kim?
Great talk. Really, really wonderful. I loved it. It was really refreshing to see like practical solutions. I think this week we've talked a lot about that. So I think it's something that could easily be replicated in the Caribbean. My question was, you mentioned hurricanes. These look like they're large structure. Could they just be towed out of the water if a storm, or would it just be too caught? That was my question. Are these movable, these platforms that you just showed?
They're certainly towable. We get nor'easters where we are. Mostly we're exposed from the south. We have not had to deal with that. We've had 6-meter waves come and haven't had to move them. But they are certainly towable. I don't know that you could crane it out of the water just because the nets get quite heavy when they're wet. And I don't know that the entire structure, I mean, you could theoretically crane it, but it would be pretty complicated. But there certainly are towable. We towed ours out and we're currently towing ours in Alabama. So you can always duck and seek if you need to the leeward side of the island.
That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Great. That's wonderful. Michael, thank you so much for your presentation. It was awesome. Our next presenter is from St. Lucia, and that would be Natasha Deterville-Moise, and she'll be speaking with us about her work with OECS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Deterville-Moise. I'm the technical. Good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Deterville-Moise. I'm the technical specialist at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS. I would be presenting on the areas of work that we have done on the Conch. Just a brief, quick background on the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. It's a 12-member state, 6 independent, 3 British, 3 French, 7 members, full members, and 5 associate member states. This Queen Conch journey, we started off with a first project, which was the Blue Bio Trade Project, financed by the EU 11th EDF and the RIDE project. It was jointly implemented by the OECS Commission in collaboration with UNCTAD and CITES. And the aim was to test and revise UNCTAD biotrade principles and criteria promoting trade and invest in marine biological resource in line with social, economic, and environmental sustainability criteria. The countries in which the project was implemented: Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Lucia. The overall objective of the project was to empower the small-scale coastal producers for OECS member states to produce, trade Queen Conch product in domestic, regional, and international markets under the Blue Biotrade environmental, social, and economical sustainability criteria, including CITES. The purpose of the project was that the OECS member states would maximize the benefits derived from production and trade of Queen Conch product in a very sustainable way. Persons involved in the project were the fishermen, Fisher Association, micro and small and medium enterprise businesses, and other stakeholders. The first outcome, stakeholders had an enhanced capacity to identify sustainable business opportunities and formulate joint actions to apply Blue Biotrade principles in the Conch value chain. Methodologies, a stakeholder mapping of the Queen Conch value chain was conducted. A regional stakeholder webinar on ocean blue economy and Blue Biotrade principles and criteria was also organized. And an assessment of the Queen Conch value chain and its Blue Biotrade potential was conducted in the 3 implementing countries. The second outcome, the small coastal producers in beneficiary countries, benefited from enhanced sustainable production and trade opportunities in King Kong value chain, the implementation of priority actions derived from the Regional Blue Biotrade Action Plan, as well as the project that we are now running into, which is the second phase of this project, working with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund to implement some of the areas under the first phase of the project, and also dissemination and outreach. I think most persons by now would have known or heard during the sessions about the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, the CBF. So in the interest of time, I probably would skip this slide. And the project, which is now the second phase of the project that is now being implemented, and based on some of the areas that needed work and development, was given that there was the depletion of the conch stock, that we would be building nurseries, hatcheries in St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have begun work with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had sessions at the end of August, and the full assessment was done there, and we would be going into full implementation stage. So the purpose of the project is to provide sustainable and sufficient resources to the conservation of ecosystems in the Caribbean region, and the objective to consolidate the architecture financially and technically for conservation in the Caribbean, to support in the long term the maintenance and restoration of biodiversity and natural resources. And as I said, the OECS Commission is in the implementation stage of the second phase of the project. I would now hand over to my colleague Diana, who would speak briefly on the work done in St. Lucia and the Seamoss.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Natasha. As she said, my name is Diana Joseph. I'm the program officer at the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund. And the SLUNCF is one of the trust funds that falls under the umbrella of the CBF. So this morning, what I really want to do is to share some insights from our work in St. Lucia, in particular Savans Bay area, focusing on Seamoss farming, its socio-ecological impacts, and the strategies we've developed to support sustainable livelihoods, sharing best practices, and lessons learned. So Savans Bay is a sheltered inlet which is rich in seagrass beds, mangroves, and coral reefs. It's traditionally a fishing village. It supports fishing, Seamoss farming, recreation, and now ecotourism. Seamoss farming, there was a surge since 2020 due to the COVID-19 economic pressures. So many persons will go into Seamoss farming because of the low cost to start up and just the availability of that resource. So what this caused was the expansion. It caused an upsurge, and obviously threatened marine habitats, user safety, and long-term livelihoods. So this is how this project was birthed. The SLUNCF saw it fit to implement a project enhancing the effective management of Savans Bay within the Point Sab environmental protected areas to support livelihoods and protect biodiversity. So the objective was really to reduce user conflict and impacts on the ecosystem resources. Some of the key activities we implemented, which was very key, and looking at consultations with the communities, stakeholder associations, fishers, and farmers. We built capacity of persons. We looked at training in the construction of buoys, for which we use for the demarcation of the bay. We did surveys, and an important component was the public awareness campaign to try to encourage people to adopt some more sustainable practices. So these are some of the results that we experienced, but what I really want to focus on is some of the sustainable practices that we're looking at. What we try to show persons was where to locate their farms so they do not damage the ecosystems, where to place their farms, and some of the best practices. So this, we were able to create an awareness campaign. Some of the lessons learned, we realize, again, how vulnerable the Seamoss industry is. And again, as we've been speaking, community engagement is key. collaboration with stakeholder agencies, the need for spatial planning to balance ecological health and livelihood access. And again, a clear legal framework is really important to guide persons in terms of balancing livelihoods and conservation. So thank you very much, and I will pass you back on to my colleague to share a video with you.
We just have a few minutes, and since the conch is most persons depend on it as a livelihood in the Eastern Caribbean, under the first phase of the project, you would just hear from some of the stakeholders who were involved.
The iconic sound of the Queen Conch signals many things across the Caribbean. For some, particularly in the OECS territories of Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is the call of opportunity.
My dad, that is what he does up to this day, and send all of us to school, and even grandchildren now is going to school from that industry as well.
In October 2020, the OECS, in collaboration with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development and CITES, launched the Blue Biotrade Project. It was financed by the European Union through the RIGHT program. The Blue Biotrade Project aims to empower fishers and small-scale coastal operators from Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines to produce and trade Queen Conch responsibly. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, popularly known as CITES, provides guidance on the sustainable management of this invaluable resource.
In terms of conch, once you're exporting the meat, you would require a CITES permit from St. Lucia. If you are importing it, you would require a CITES permit from the country of origin.
The information gathered through phase 1 of the Blue Biotrade project is being studied and incorporated into an action plan for the advancement of the Queen Conch industry. Key to future success is an ongoing stock assessment to determine what corrective measures need to be implemented.
What we're seeing with the fishers that we're interviewed so far is that they're having to go deeper and deeper and on longer dives to catch the same amount of conch.
Most times about 80 to 100 feet. But there are places where that you have to go to about 115, 120 feet sometimes.
Presently, the Queen Conch is also under threat due to issues such as overfishing and climate change. The Queen Conch is widely regarded as a delicacy, and many believe there is potential to explore new ways of enjoying the seafood regionally and internationally.
Every part of the conch can be used. The shell can be used for ornaments, to make beads.
It can be used to make carbon neutral cement. It also can be used to make artificial reefs.
In 2020, conch made up 62.7% of St. Vincent's exported fish and fish products.
We ship, as I mentioned, to Dubai.
Our main markets is in the US. We move anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 pounds by monthly.
In Miami presently, a pound of conch is $30 US.
We are actually stepping into not unknown territory because for years fisher folk have done their thing, but moving it to a new level of sophistication, a new level of value.
Sorry. Yes, so that's the end of the video. So the OECS Commission is really working with member states to become CITES compliant and to receive the stock assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha and Diana. Don't go away. You have time for questions. No, that's just for the other speakers. It's marked at 12 minutes, but then you have another 3 minutes for questions. So you're good. Do we have some questions for OECS and Natasha and Diana about their work?
Thank you. Mine is not a question, it's just some recommendation. As I see, the outputs for this project. Some of them, like on value chain and all this, will be of interest to ongoing project or new project in the OECS countries. So a project like the Fish Adapt project in St. Lucia, a big, a huge green climate fund project, 15 million USD. So the value chain analysis that has been done by the BECLME Plus, I think they talk about it, and the study on the Conch that you had, the Seamoss, all these are foreseen to be addressed. So this coordination and synergy among the various projects to actually leverage these valuable results will be, very essential. So it's just to share this perspective with OECS, as St. Lucia, for instance, stand as a very good candidate for this coordination and synergy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The Government of St. Lucia Ministry of Fisheries, we have been in discussion with them on this project, the ADAPT project, and they are also fully engaged with us in implementing this project, and we have taken on board some of the areas to consider within the project.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Okay, thank you so much, Natasha and Diana. Our next speaker will be Rich Appeldoorn.
Thank you and good morning, if it's still morning. My colleagues and I have been working for CITES for some time now, trying to develop guidance for non-detriment findings for queen conch, and supposedly supplying a simplified approach for meeting CITES requirements. You need an NDF statement to be able to export conch to any place else. So it's called the CITES Non-Detriment Findings for Queen Conch, a 10-step process to support CITES scientific authorities making science-based non-detriment findings for queen conch. The question is, what is the essence of an NDF? And this is a word cloud from the document. And you can see, yes, it's based on management, it's queen conch, supposedly has a scientific background, you're looking at the population, but that's not really the essence. The essence is this. Unknowns, risks, information, and the littlest thing in there, precaution is probably the most important. So the word cloud doesn't really tell you what's really going on. To put this in another context, we have unknowns. Unknowns cause uncertainty, and those uncertainties cause risks. And there's only two ways to really alleviate that. One is to get more information so you have fewer unknowns, or you become more precautionary in your management strategies, including to the point of deciding that you're not going to export because you just don't know enough to know whether that's going to be safe to do. Now, what is meant by simplified? And simplified has multiple interpretations. And these lead to certain expectations. Is it talking about the data required or the organizational structure, the expertise needed to do the assessments or to make decisions? And I'll say, first of all, there's nothing simple about assessing a conch population. I'll talk more about it in detail. What this does do is provide a roadmap and gap analysis. So it helps you organize the approach to data collection and evaluation into discrete steps. It has a way to organize that necessary information, provides the background and guidance on how to evaluate that information, and in that process, you will identify information gaps. It has a section in the beginning that talks about the prerequisites for understanding queen conch assessments, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then there are actually 10 steps to do the the NDF evaluation. Each step gives criteria and rationale for that step. And it's accompanied by an Excel table for organizing information and to facilitate evaluation. We have tried to develop a numerical score guidance to go along with this. We're currently in the process of testing that, at least in theoretical sense. And there are two appendices. One uses hypothetical case studies where you get a positive, negative, or conditional NDF outcome. And we also have an appendix on the use of conversion factors for different processing grades and non-meat products like opercula or pearls. So there are a number of things you really need to understand if you're going to try and do queen conch assessments. One is you have to know the queen conch's role in the environment, because CITES requires not just a healthy population, but a population that is going to maintain its ecological role. So you need to know what that role is. You need to know about assessments in queen conch biology, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. It talks about the definition and use of the word density. Density is an important concept for looking at the state of conch populations, and it's terribly misused by the people who are looking at that data. Has a section on useful data and potential sources, and I'll talk about that more. And so data collection requirements, conversion factors, and the trade-offs inherent in NDF assessments, and that's really talking about risk versus precautionary approaches. So assessments in queen conch biology. The first thing you have to know is that conch are not fish. And if you're familiar with doing assessments with fish, you have to unlearn what you have learned. So it's difficult. And the first problem is that we have determinate growth and shell length. So as they approach maturity, they put down the flared lip, and that's as far as they grow in length. And the size at which they do this is highly variable and probably mostly habitat dependent. The two conch there are scaled at the same size, and you can see they're quite a bit different. There's no single measure that can relate shell size to age. We use shell length and then lip thickness after they put down the lip. And at the time that they put out the lip, the shell length, the maximum size, the flesh weight are all more or less fixed. And that includes gonad weight. And therefore, a larger individual is going to have a larger gonad, but it's not going to grow any more than what it is at the time it puts out the lip. So reproduction requires copulation. So the conch need to be in some kind of density where they can find each other and undergo copulation. They cannot migrate long distances. And these have significant implications for management. So we need to think about conserving spawning densities. We need to consider about saving or conserving megaspawners, but also raises the question of how do you define a megaspawner? It's going to be different from fish. And it also affects the use of conversion factors, because that's going to change based on the size of your individuals. So here's some of the data sources you can use. On the left-hand column are the types of information, and across the top are the sources for that information. The first thing you'll see is that not every source of information gives you perhaps what you're looking for. So at a low end, you might have Fisher interviews to get information, and it's pretty good for getting, if it's done structurally correctly and statistically valid, catch and effort information, location, what the processing level is, whether they see reproductive activity, what the markets are, and what the economic values are. But it doesn't give you anything about population density or necessary size structure. You would actually have to intercept the catch dockside or in a processing plant, or do an in situ survey to look at size structures, and population density you're probably only going to get from in situ surveys. So there are different methods there's different data that come from those methods. The approach is designed to be flexible to deal with the kind of data you have. It's another question of whether you have enough data. And obviously, if you look at the chart, having different sources of data is really valuable because you'll get more information, or you'll get confirmation of information from multiple sources. So the guidance has kind of an introduction that's how do you use the guidance, and talks about different queen conch products you have to look at, but then it gets into these 10 steps for actually doing the NDF, and it's really divided into 2 stages. The first stage really addresses the question, do you need an NVF? Because if you're not dealing with conch, or it hasn't come from your jurisdictional waters, you don't need an NDF. If your scientific authority, CITES scientific authority, is not properly constituted, or you don't have one, you can't do an NDF. So that basically says stop there. So the rest of the steps are the actual NDF assessment. And each one of these steps has a rationale. Presents the key questions that are being addressed in each step. It provides guidance on how to look at those things, how to proceed with them, and then there are worksheets that go with each of these steps. And finally, there's a glossary and an appendix that looks at these scenarios. And I'm hoping you can't read this because I don't want you to. And this is actually an earlier version that only had 9 steps, but what it shows, this is a flow chart where you would go and somebody would ask for an expert permit. They go to the CITES Management Authority, who then approaches the CITES Scientific Authority to see whether they can issue an NDF. And so there's a number of steps that you go through this, and if you're following the green path, that means everything you've hit in that step looks really good, and you would go ahead and issue an NDF, a positive NDF. But normally we don't have that. We have some places where we have a lot of information, some places where we don't have a lot of information, and that's the yellow path. So you might hit a step and say, okay, I'm not really good, but I know something. Let me go on to the next step and see how I do. And, you know, how much of an accumulated problem are you generating along that path? If it's good enough, you can generate a conditional NDF, which says, okay, we'll let you do that, but you have some gaps, and you have a time period, say 3 years, to meet those gaps if you want to keep doing this. And then you might hit something where it's just really going to stop. And that's what the red paths are, where you just find something that says your population's already in trouble from the data that you have, and that would lead you to a negative NDF. The moral here, however, if I can paraphrase Led Zeppelin, there are 3 paths you can go by, but in the long run, you can change the path you're on. And that's what we're trying to do, is find out what path you're on and what do you need to do to get on the right one. The basis of this is, for each step, is that there are tables that outline what are we interested in, and then how do we parameterize those. So this is just part of one table from looking at evaluating the harvest impacts of queen conch. And it's looking at things about area. Is it really coming from a large area, or is it a really small isolated population? Are there size limits in some way? Closed seasons, allowable catch, numbers of individuals or densities. What kind of information do you have on these that we're concerned about? But then it really gets down to these indicators, and this is only 6 of the 16 potential indicators. When I say potential, you're not expected to have all of these. It's just, you know, what do you have? And I'll just look at the first one, which is catch per unit effort. And low impact severity would be you don't have a change, or it's actually increasing over time, and you have a stable variance around that. If you have a situation where it's decreasing slightly and occasionally over time, and your variance is still staying fairly normal, that's kind of a medium impact. And if your catch per unit effort declines steadily over time, you're getting a lot of variability, that's a high impact severity. And the reason I picked this up is because this is explicitly talking about changes over time. So even though some of these will give you a snapshot of where you might be, what we're really trying to get you to do is look at changes over time. This is a repetitive process. And it leads to multi-indicator types of management approaches. And then we have the worksheets. These are in Excel. Again, this is just part of one that looks at the top 6 things. And what you see here is you have the same factors I had on the other one, and you have to list what you think the impacts are going to be, and then are they high, medium, or low risk, according to the last table I just shown. And importantly, you have to document your information sources. And this is probably the hardest part, because you have to go back into your literature and regulations or whatever and find out where you got this information from and put it in there. Once you have that, the next steps are all, when you do this again, that information is already there, and it becomes easy. Also, and very important, what's the confidence you have on the information that you have? And low confidence means high risk, right? This is a table from evaluation management measures, and it looks at, again, just a subset of those. What are the measures? Are they documented in law or just a regulation, or is just something that's convention? How strong is that? What's your expected conservation impact? Are you monitoring this routinely? Is there enforcement? Again, what are your sources for this information and the confidence you have in that information? And you'll notice that some of these are related to actions that are dealing with the conch population itself, and some of them, more like at the bottom, are dealing with information that you're getting, because if you have that information, that at least allows you to look at some parameters that can be drawn from those information sources. And we have a scoring thing. Again, this is from an earlier version with just 9 steps, but you will evaluate all those steps and you'll get a score and suggestions about what that might mean. So I'll end there and remind everybody who's interested in this that there is going to be a gathering and an informal presentation in much more detail at 2 o'clock in a room that's right below there. So if you're out by the giant wooden deer and you're facing the reception, it's off on your right.
Thank you so much, Rich. That's great presentation. Okay, our next presentation will be presented by Robinson Bazurto and also Lachelle Russell.
Good morning. My name is Robinson Bazurto. I'm a Queen Conch Lab Operational Manager at Harbor Brand, Florida Atlantic University. Today, I present about our Grand Bahama project experience. This project is a compelling example of how restoration, science, and community can merge towards a common goal. Through the Queen Call, through the, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, this project is a compelling example of how restoration, science, and community can merge toward a common goal. Through the Queen Conch Mariculture Center and collaboration with the Blue Action Lab, Coravita, and Florida Atlantic University, this initiative demonstrates how local innovation can drive ecological recovery while creating sustainable social and economic opportunities for island communities. This project could not be possible without our sponsor Builder Initiative. To understand the foundation behind the Grand Bahama project, it is important to look at the framework that guides our approach. At its core, this framework is built on partnership and collaboration. we, Quincon Lab, do not see restoration as a single ecological effort, but as an integrated system where environmental recovery support economic growth and social well-being. By aligning technology, resources, and benefits, we create a cycle where each element reinforces other, leading to truly sustainable marine restoration. But before we talk about this project, it's critical to understand the story behind the problem. Across the Caribbean, quincunx population have declined dramatically, a symbol of how human pressure can unsettle both ecosystems and economies. But within this decline lies a powerful opportunity to restore ecosystem, biodiversity, and to reinforce the communities whose culture and livelihoods depend on the ocean. The recovery requires more than a simple restoration. Oh, sorry. It's not working for me today. The recovery requires more than a simple restoration. It demands rebuilding the entire ecological and social systems. As a social system, supported by suitable regulation that ensures sustainable harvest and long-term protection. This is where integration turns from concept into action. The quincunx represents more than any species. It reflects the delicate balance between people and the ocean. Years of overexploitation have left visible scars, yet these mollusks remains essential to identity and economy of many Caribbean communities. Today, our effort focuses on rebuilding this population within the natural habits, ensuring that ecological recovery, effective management, and human well-being advancing together. Our mission, the Quincunx Lab mission, is centered to help in restoring the quincunx as a keystone of marine and community life. Through research, aquaculture, conservation, and education, we aim to rebuild healthy population while building up the connection between people and their environment. Each of these pillars support a shared vision, ensuring that the species, the ecosystem, and the island communities succeed together. The vision is simple, but powerful: to see a conch hatchery or farm in every Caribbean nation. By rebuilding together, restoration becomes more than recovery. It becomes opportunity for ecosystem to flourish and community to prosper. Here, we see how restoration becomes more than environmental effort. It becomes a living example of integration. Through this system, science meets community. Aquaculture supports ecological recovery, while training and local participation create real economy opportunities. It is a model that shows how restoring a species can also restore balance between people, nature, and sustainable development. And what a better way to illustrate this than by hearing from someone who lives this experience every day. Lachelle Rosell, who is a technician on the Mariculture Center in Grand Bahamas and who lives this experience every day. I would like to invite Lachelle to continue with the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Robinson. As Robinson mentioned, my name is Lachelle Russell, and I'm an aquaculture technician at the Blue Action Lab. On Grand Bahama Island, we have Conservation Cove, which is a conservation and restoration mecca for the natural resources within the Bahamas. Within Conservation Cove, we have 3 entities. The first is Coral Vita, also known as the Coral Farm. We also have Waterkeepers Bahamas, known as the Mangrove Farm, and the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center, known as the Mangrove Farm. Coral Vita's main goal is to preserve and restore the coral reef ecosystems through growing resilient corals rapidly at scale and deploying them within degraded ecosystems. Waterkeepers Bahamas' main goal is to ensure that the waters and the watersheds of the Bahamas are swimmable, fishable, and drinkable for current and future generations. And lastly, the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center's main goal is to restore the wild queen conch population by producing and releasing 2,000 juvenile conch per year into the wild. Since conception, the facility has upgraded from 1 to 2 mobile labs, the first being the conch hatchery and the second the pearl lab. Over the last few months, we've introduced a broodstock colony and have integrated an algal turf scrubber system, which serves as an additional food source for the animals. Our latest addition to the facility is the addition of the pearl colony, which will be used to culture conch pearls. The conch hatchery is able to take the conch through the 3 major life phases. The first being the egg incubation phase, which lasts 4 to 5 days. The second phase is the larval rearing phase, which lasts anywhere between 21 to 30 days. And lastly, we have the metamorphosis phase, which lasts for up to 4 months. The hatchery is also equipped to culture microalgae to feed the larvae. After 4 months, the metamorphosed conch will be transferred to nursery tanks where they will reside for 1 year and grow between 7 to 9 centimeters before they will be released into marine protected areas where they will dwell in pens in the seagrass beds. In June of this year, we had 22 queen conch egg masses laid on land, which was the first in the Bahamas as well as the Caribbean. As a result of this, 11 million eggs were released back into the wild in areas such as West End, Fortune Bay, and Banana Bay Beach. In November of this year, a pearl culturing project will take place and 48 conch will be seeded for pearl production. This project demonstrates a direct correlation between technological advancement and economic innovation in Grand Bahama. By transferring aquaculture technology from an institution like Florida Atlantic University to a local industry, the project encourages knowledge-based economic growth and diversification of a traditional marine resource into higher valued products like conch pearls. Since conception, the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center, in partnership with Florida Atlantic University and Blue Action Lab, has hosted 2 aquacultural development workshops for early career aquaculturists for 3 islands in the Bahamas. Approximately 400 tours have been hosted on the grounds. Visitors, including local and foreign diplomats, international and domestic students, tourists, and individuals interested in conservation and/or aquaculture. Programs such as Tides of Change, the Waterkeepers Cadet Program, and internships with the Marine Science Department of the University of the Bahamas have been established to educate members of the community and expose them to the work being carried out by Blue Action Lab. An annual open house known as Community Day has also been established at Conservation Cove to promote local awareness of the great threats that face our national treasures and broadcast the steps taken to mitigate these issues. Through integrating ecology, economics, and social engagement, the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center will be able to restore the queen conch population through environmentally friendly practices, provide jobs to locals, and promote sustainable fishing practices through educating the local community. The Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center serves as an example for the Caribbean by mitigating the challenges faced as a result of climate change, loss of habitat due to urbanization, and overfishing. This project is important to the Bahamas because it ensures food security by restoring the population of an organism, which serves as a main food source for its locals as well as many visitors. Many livelihoods are dependent on the survival of this species. On Grand Bahama Island, many communities are built on the existence of the queen conch. And this is why, as a Bahamian, I am so proud to be a part of a project that is important not only to the ecosystem, but the Bahamian way of life. There's a lot more to say about the Grand Bahama project, so we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Robinson and Lachelle. You have time for questions.
Thank you. Actually have two questions. My first question is, do we know actually how much money it is to produce one conch? Because we didn't have any data on economic data. And the second question is, how can you monitor the efficiency of the restoration of the queen conch? I mean, do you have any data on the survival rate and to know if actually it does restore the population?
Okay, to answer your first question, we do not have a figure on how much it costs to produce or restore the conch. Secondly, in Grand Bahama, we haven't started the outplanting as yet, so we don't have any numbers to say how well it would survive once they've been outplanted. But other countries have done this, like in Jamaica, so they have information on that.
Thank you. We have time for another question.
For the initiative for the Queen Conch Pearl, that is set up to be like you inoculate the pearl and then you release it, or do you how does that work?
Can I?
Do you want me to address that?
Okay, that's fine. We could.
So basically for the per part, we're not gonna release the animal. We seed the animal with it's two ways to do it, with the mantle of the nucleus and keep it for almost more than a year, and then we harvest the pearl. But the animal are not gonna release it back to the environment.
Time for one more question. Okay, thank you, Lachelle and Robinson. We have one more presentation by Becky Holt, which will be virtual. And then right after the session, those that were in this session, we'd like to get a group photo if you could stay for that.
Morning, everyone. My name is. By now, I'm sure you've learned the importance of the queen conch, but just as a refresher, it's an important herbivore in seagrass beds. It's a cultural icon in the Bahamas and a nutritional staple. It's also a huge economic contributor to local communities. And conservation aquaculture has huge advantages for these island communities. Diversified livelihoods for fishers and entrepreneurial community members, enhancement of skills to retain local workforce, and an ability to receive new technology and new research topics for local students. And last but not least, building ecotourism opportunities. So now we know it's important as a species. It can be used as a great tool for conservation aquaculture, but we also know that it's in trouble. And we know that it's a CITES 2 fishery, and that NOAA has listed it as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. We at the Queen Conch Lab know that we can be part of the solution. Our vision is for a queen conch farm in every Caribbean country. And every day we're delivering on our mission to grow the queen conch for the sake of the species, the ecosystem, and the island communities. I think we can all agree that conservation success depends not only on science and data, but also on building community capacity and inspiring stewardship from an early age. In 2004 and 2005, we ran 4 educational projects in the Bahamas, thanks to our generous funders and collaborative partners. The first project was Conch in the Classroom, funded by the McPike-Sema Foundation. The second was capacity building for developing future Grand Bahamian leaders in marine sciences and conservation, a path using Queen Conch mariculture and restoration training, funded by More Bahamas Foundation. The third was Queen Conch aquaculture workshops hosted at the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center and funded by Builders Initiative. And the fourth is eConch, which runs year-round and is eConch for online learning for growing eConch, for growing Queen Conch, excuse me. And that's funded by Philanthropic Gifts and SK NOAA. Conch in the Classroom is a project that we run in Grand Bahama. It's a fantastic program funded by McPike-Sema Foundation. It started in 2024 and it's in its second year. In the first year, we worked with 5 primary schools and our partner on the ground, Earth Care, a local NGO, to bring conch curriculum into the classroom for the students, where they learned about conch biology, conservation, fisheries management, and how to care for conch in an aquarium in their classroom. They also had visits from a local shell artist to come by and show them how he carves his shells into unique artwork. In 2025, we expanded that program from 5 primary schools to 10, and then later in the 20th year, we partnered with Friends of the Environment in Abaco to expand Conch in the Classroom curriculum out to their island. So we're very excited about the growth of this program and the impact it's having on the youth in the Bahamas. To reach older students, the Queen Conch Lab and Blue Action Lab partnered on a capacity building program and developed a conch module for the Water Keepers Cadets program. This program was funded by the More Bahamas Foundation, and it addressed the Water Keepers Cadets program, which is grades 10 through 12. These students worked in the Grand Bahama Queen Conch Mariculture Center at the mobile labs and learned about conch biology and got real exposure to conservation careers and developed many skills while working there. On the very last day of the program, they had presentations, and some of these presentation topics were projects on seagrass diatoms, juvenile growth, and shell middens. It made for a really exciting day. We also have our Queen Conch aquaculture workshops hosted at the Queen Conch Mariculture Center and funded by Builders Initiative. We've had 2 so far, and at these workshops, we invite staff from our other labs in the Bahamas to come and train. We call it our multi-island training. We have our labs from Grand Bahama, Blue Action Lab staff. We have our staff from Eleuthera at the Cape Eleuthera Institute come for the training. And we also have our staff from Great Exuma from Bahamas National Trust come to the trainings. And it's a great way for these young scientists to get together and share knowledge and resources, and everyone can learn new techniques and get the same amount of training all in one session. eConch is our program that we run year-round, completely online and completely free for anyone wanting to learn how to grow queen conch from home at any scale. And the goal of this program is to create a network of young and seasoned aquaculture professionals that are committed to restoring queen conch populations. eConch is based off of these 7 modules and features some high quality video content from these Queen Conch Lab sites that you see here. It has access to expert advice, and you can move at your own pace. You can take it from anywhere in the world. eConch is a really important part of our training for our program. All of our staff at our facilities take econ from start to finish. Econ has also been around since June of 2024. So we have some statistics we'd like to share with you. We currently have 171 participants on econ. So that is 171 people have signed up. We have 23 countries represented on the platform, and we have 51 people that have completed our course. And the growth that we've seen in the past 8 months is in participation has been 57%. We've had 8 new countries that have come on in the past 8 months. So 8 new countries are represented. And our course completions grew by 82% in the past 8 months as well. So if you'd like to sign up, this is an important part of how we train as well. queenconclab.com/e. Thanks so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you all have a great rest of the conference and safe travels home. Feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. And if any of you have some burning questions, I'll be going live in just a few moments. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Do we have the opportunity to bring Becky in live? No? Okay. Becky, if you're hearing us, we're thankful for your presentation. And actually, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I just remembered. I know all about this program. Yes, Rich.
Yeah, my question is, how many hours of, instruction like you would have in a classroom or something, does the econ program represent? Is it like, 45-hour semester-long course type of thing, or?
Okay, that's a good question. I've never counted up the number of hours. And so each module, there's usually a video, and then there's PowerPoints that I speak with you all too about the information. And there are some other types of resource materials that you can look into, and then you take a little quiz, and then you move on to the next module. So I'd have to get back to you on the number of hours. I mean, I imagine it's somewhere around 30 or 40. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining the invertebrate and aquaculture session today. That will wrap it up, and I'll just have the speakers come forward so we can get a photograph. Thank you so much, and enjoy your lunch.
I posted on the Also, if anybody tried it to get on to use the QR code, and apparently it did not work, I posted on the app, and I think it's under Aquaculture Podcast, so it should be pretty easy to find. And there's an Apple and Spotify link, so check that out if you want. Yeah.
Okay, just to wrap up before the lunch break, thanks to everyone who bid on items in the silent auction. We really appreciate your support. Most people have been to pay for and collect their items. There are a few people who have not. Calling out to Laurel Field, Carlos Ballesteros, Sep Hakivo, Camilla Roa, and Michelle Barrow. Please come and pay for your